All right, so with the 1.01, do I even need to say it at this point? Like, this is so easy and obvious. It's Bijan Robinson. Is there an argument for him not to be the 1.01? I guess in Superflex, I could see you really need that quarterback, but you're taking value over need, and
The
it's Bijan.
only argument is you have a 0 RB league. That's it. Like there's no running backs in the league at
You
all. Like,
never
that's the
start
only
running
way.
back. Okay.
Right. Like that's the only possible scenario. He does not go 101.
Right. I could see if you have the 101 and you're not ready for a running back, you could trade back. That would be, but you have the value of the 101 is so great this year because of Bijan Robinson. There's really never been a running back. I guess Saquon Barkley would have been the last one of
He
where it
should
just,
be the last one.
yeah, where it just felt like people have been waiting for this guy to come out for like 2 years. And now we're here, and there is no amount of dynasty trades or players or real money that is going to pull away Bijan from a lot of people. So
yeah, I traded for the 101, or what I thought would end up being the 101 in probably July. It ended up being the 101, and no, yeah, there is a 0% chance I trade that pick. I don't care how good or bad my team is. He will be on my roster come May. Like it's 100%. It's a guarantee. Do we jump to the 102? Is it my turn to maybe shake it up depending on how people view
hit me with
rankings? For me, I think at this point, and it's nice to kind of get back to this. We're going back to quarterback. Obviously, that was not the case last year. But for me, it's Bryce Young. And I get the argument for why it could be CJ Stroud. But the difference maker here is the rushing upside that Bryce Young offers is what makes him a better fantasy quarterback than CJ Stroud. Stroud could easily, and I think probably will be, the better real life NFL quarterback. I truly believe that. But Bryce Young, it's going to be Trevor Lawrence versus Justin Fields. Maybe not to that extreme, but that's the type of floor versus ceiling you're looking at. Whereas they're both very good already, Fields and Lawrence. But Fields has shown an astronomical ceiling that Trevor Lawrence right now probably doesn't have consistently, and that's just because of the rushing. So for me, Bryce Young is that 102. Again, him and Stroud, I don't care who you put one or the other, but I think I'm just going to lean upside at this pick here.
Is there going to be a decision for you of you don't want the quarterback that Houston ends up taking? Is that going to factor in at all of how bad that team is that you just bumped the other guy?
No, I don't think it is, because they also have Cleveland's first, and I believe they add in a wide receiver there. And then in the second, fingers crossed, I get Dameon Pierce is there. I want them to add Jahmyr Gibbs and give him like Quentin Johnston, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bryce Young, or CJ Stroud. And oh my God, that offense is magic. Like that's my dream. Like they really could do that though. And like, that's the type of thing. And even if you look at Trevor Lawrence 2 years ago, like that offense was a joke when he got drafted there. Now you're looking at it. They have pieces. They have Ridley. They're going to continue to build. I'm fine. I'm not really going to factor in situation too much there.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like that might be a conversation for a lot of people, that Houston's team is just so bad that it might make sense to take the other guy, which, I'm taking at the 1.03 here, CJ Stroud, because, again, Superflex. I think this is going to be your top three in 99% of Superflex leagues out there. It might be a different order. Hopefully still Bijan at 101 and these two quarterbacks or whatever order. Yeah, but I'm just going to take CJ Stroud. Basically everything like you said. I mean, he might end up being the better actual NFL quarterback. He is going to be much more of a prototypical passing fantasy quarterback. When you think of, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, what we think Trevor Lawrence can kind of grow into. He does have a little bit of the rushing capability. So he's not complete. He's not a statue. He's not Derek Carr. He's not Kirk Cousins. He's not somebody like that. He is somebody who is going to get the job done primarily through the air, but also can do a little bit with his feet. That's not, a zero at that point. So I'll take CJ Stroud at the 1.03, and we're pretty chalky here.
So for me, when I go to the 104, this is where I think people could diverge a little bit. Mm-hmm. But for me, has been, always will be most likely, Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama. And he is this class's and I hate comping players without athletics or anything like that, but he just reminds me of Alvin Kamara. Like the play style, the ease at which that man runs, catches the ball, and just cannot be brought down. It just screams Alvin Kamara. And again, I hate doing it without athletic comps and everything else, but that's the type of player, that's the type of ceiling, the type of caliber guy he is. So I think it makes sense to take him at 104. And even if receivers behind him or, Zach Evans gets a better landing spot, I'm a talent over situation guy 10 times out of 10 in Dynasty. I think most people should be. It usually pans out well. And Jahmyr Gibbs is possibly or probably the fourth best player in this draft. I don't think his landing spot's going to change that.
I'm all aboard and with Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's a clear-cut RB2. People are going to look at his size, I think, because you know how colleges like to over-exaggerate how big some of these guys are. And the fact that he's already being listed at 5'11", 200, if he comes in at 5'10" in the 190s, I think we might have some size concerns, at least in terms of, is an NFL team going to look at Jahmyr Gibbs at that size and say, he is going to be the focal point of our backfield? Or is he going to need to be, like kind of how Alvin Kamara was at the beginning of his career, how we see DeAndre Swift being utilized right now, where he's not getting, 14, 15 carries and 5-6 targets. He is getting 8 to 10 carries and 5+ targets, which might lower his overall ceiling. But I think with the receiving volume, that is really what we're going for here. And that's the upside and ceiling that we're chasing. So at the 1.05, I think the first 4 picks are pretty chalky. Like you said, 1.04, we can start diverging, but I feel like that's still like 70-80% of leagues are going to just be Jahmyr Gibbs. 1.05 is where things start opening up. I've already seen a lot of people talk about this is where QB3 slots in. This is where RB3 slots in. Do I go wide receiver because I have the pick of the litter and just take whoever I want there? This is, I think, the biggest decision point right now before everything else. And right here, I kind of feel like this is kind of on brand for me because he has an amazing last name, but I'm going to take Jordan Addison. He is going to end up being my wide receiver 1, not just because his last name is amazing, like I said, but from just a production profile, his size is going to be concerning. But everything that you watch him do on film, analytically, he just looks absolutely amazing. He did it at Pitt, and I remember you said in your top 3 wide receiver videos, I totally agree with it. He is the reason Kenny Pickett was a first-round pick. And that is 100% true. That's 100% true. But then he goes to USC. He's with Heisman winner Caleb Williams and does it again at USC. So he's absolutely amazing. He is going to be my wide receiver 1 in this class. I know that probably sounds like a hot take, but that's where I'm at right now.
If you guys have watched my video, right now he is my wide receiver 2. He is in that same tier as my wide receiver 1, who we'll get to in just a second here. But Jordan Addison, I mean, you look at from even an analytical standpoint, right? He's up in the top 75% of all college dominator rankings. He's top, 96th percentile in breakout age. The guy checks the analytical boxes. Size will be a concern. You touched on it. But when you're this good, I don't particularly care. Like, as long as he doesn't come in at 5'8", like 160, it doesn't matter to me. Like, my guess is he'll probably end up being like 5'10". Think Elijah Moore size, maybe a little bit bigger. And that's fine because regardless of what happened with Elijah Moore, I think he's still very good. Jordan Addison is 10 times better. He is a just more naturally gifted wide receiver. He is very worthy at being the 105. He's just not the 105 for me.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So are you going 106?
So 106, if you guys watch the video, and again, if it's up there, maybe Addison can drop the link. It is it is Jaxon Smith-Njigba out of Ohio State. And I understand, right, he didn't play this year basically at all. Like, it's not he got 50 yards. I don't care. I don't care what happened this season, because you go back and look at him and he looked like an alpha wide receiver on the same roster as Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, who are both already turning into superstars in front of our eyes as rookies. I think JSN is basically going to be a Keenan Allen 2.0, a big slot where he just kind of dominates the middle of the field. He can play outside. He just hasn't had to do it. We probably would have seen it this year, but I think he has the ability to play outside. He's an elite route runner. And again, you don't accidentally put up 300 something yards in a college game. Like that's freakish. And that wasn't even his first 200 plus yard game on the season. So the ceiling is there. It's not a Gabe Davis situation where we're looking at a freakish playoff game. Like, he had a track record and put up 1,600 yards as a sophomore in college. The dude can ball.
He is absolutely insane. Should be probably the wide receiver one. I just am a little bit partial, I think, to Jordan Addison and the production profile, especially analytically, that I'm looking at. And you might be asking yourself, wouldn't JSN also have a fantastic analytical profile? But there's one blemish that I found, and I don't even know if it's a blemish because he didn't play this year. And you could probably just say, well, he would have, checked this box had he played this year. Although I'm not entirely sure because Marvin Harrison Jr. is also there. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is better than Jaxon Smith-Njigba. But the blemish that I found was he does not have a 30% dominator breakout age, which, if you don't know what dominator rating is, it's basically a measurement of how much of your team's offense are you soaking up yourself between receiving yards and receiving touchdowns. Breakout age then is the lowest age at which you hit a certain percentage dominator threshold. So a lot of people go by 20%. 30% is a much tighter filter that is used to find more higher ceiling and more elite wide receivers. Jaxon Smith-Njigba hits a 20% breakout age at age 19. That was last year, so that's fantastic. Did not hit 30%. For comparison, Jordan Addison had a 20% breakout age at age 18, so that was his freshman season, and a 30% breakout age at 19 years old in his sophomore season to match Jaxon Smith-Njigba. So I went through and I looked at every first-round wide receiver since 2014 that did not have a 30% breakout age, and then here's the list. So it's Kadarius Toney, Jalen Waddle, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Hollywood Brown, Mike Williams, Laquan Treadwell, Devontae Parker, and Kelvin Benjamin. That is the list of first-round wide receivers since 2014 that does not have a 30% breakout age. I did have somebody comment and say that the interesting part of this is that the three players that they want on that list, Waddle, Hollywood, and Mike Williams, all have unique game-winning characteristics that Jaxon Smith-Njigba does not have. Jalen Waddle and Hollywood obviously have game-breaking speed. Mike Williams is just massive, and
he's a freak. He's a so freak in nature,
and is a prototypical alpha wide receiver. Makes contested catches, does all that kind of stuff. Jaxon Smith-Njigba does not have any of that. He is smaller. He is slower. He is much more of, like you said, a slot wide receiver, a Keenan Allen type. Maybe a Jerry Jeudy, and maybe that's kind of where his median range of outcomes lies, more so than I think a lot of people might think that he could be a Justin Jefferson, a Jamar Chase, a somebody of that kind of ceiling. I think his floor is a lot higher, but I think the ceiling is lower. So I think that's interesting.
When you compare him to a guy like Quentin Johnston, like, you look at ceiling, it is night and day. Quentin Johnston could be DK Metcalf, could be, another just big athletic freak of nature running around out there. But Quentin Johnston could also be Laquan Treadwell. Like, that is
JJ Arcega-White.
Oh, yeah. Jesus, please, no. That is he could be Kevin White. Like, that is in the range of outcomes for Quentin Johnston. I don't see a world where you take JSN and in 2 years, or I personally don't see a world, I should say, where he is just dust. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that is going to be an outcome for JSN strictly because of the route running, the yards after the catch, the things he can do very, very well this early in his career. But I do agree the ceiling is not going to be a lead the league in NFL receiving yards, a la, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson type of guy. Mm-hmm. I would like for that to be. I just don't think that will be the case.
All right, so at the 1.07 here, I'm going to take, and this also might be a hot take, but I'm going to take my RB3 that is not Zach Evans. I'm going to take Sean Tucker out of Syracuse.
Sean Tucker. Oh, I love Sean Tucker.
Sean Tucker, I think, is going to be really underrated. Not in the sense that, like, I think he should be a top 5 running back, and I don't see him be. I think he's going to be basically in everybody's top 5. But I think he's underrated because I think people are going to have him more at 4 and 5 than they will at 3, like I have him at 3. Sean Tucker, to me, checks a lot of the boxes that I'm looking for from a running back. He had early production in his first 2 years and continued that on as a workhorse running back at Syracuse. He has the receiving volume. He has 36 receptions as a best season of receptions. And then his size is all right. I mean, he's listed at 5'10", 205 pounds. That's pretty good size for kind of today's NFL running back. He's not going to kill you as a bowling ball, but he's not super tiny, in the sense that we're kind of concerned about size. But I just love Sean Tucker a lot more just because I feel like we've seen a greater portfolio of work from him as a 3-down workhorse at Syracuse than we have guys like Zach Evans, Blake Corum, other guys that would be in that kind of conversation for RB3.
Yeah, I know. I honestly, and I'm going to do this, mid video. Sean Tucker might be my RB3. I'm going to do it mid swap right now. And the thing with Sean Tucker is when you watch his tape, he does look like a guy with true game breaking speed. Like he runs in the 4.3s, I will not be surprised.
He's a track athlete. He's
a track star. He's going to be a 4.3 guy. He's someone the combine scouters,
they're going to love him.
They are going to lose their mind at Sean Tucker. And that's not the reason to love him. It's a nice reason, like to be like, oh, Sean Tucker is going to be, here's an extra trait, but it's the receiving upside. It's his work between the tackles, his ability to shake guys and not go down on first contact. All of those things that Sean Tucker does well are just going to be exemplified by him breaking a tackle and then getting up to running like a 4.35 and just dusting everybody.
Yeah, I agree with you. The combine is going to do wonders for him, and that's one of the things that I'm hoping does happen, so that the draft capital is then there for him. If he's a top 10 or 15 pick in the second round, I'm going to be absolutely in love with that. And Sean Tucker is probably going to be on a lot of my teams because I think he's going to be a player that, despite all of that, is still going to go in the back half of the first, because we're going to prop up wide receivers and quarterbacks at that point, depending on draft capital, maybe other running backs. I'm going to absolutely love Sean Tucker. I'm putting my stamp on it here now so I can say receipts in December. Sean Tucker 107 RB3.
and then we got it in there. I fully flip-flopped on everything I said, and I'm in on Sean Tucker. So we both got receipts. It's good. So we're on to 108. And this one, I'm going to caveat this pick. If this player gets first-round draft capital, he is 108. It is Anthony Richardson. The upside that he possesses it's so enticing. Like, he could be the best fantasy quarterback from this class. That is the upside he possesses. He also possesses a crippling floor to where he is literally nothing in 2 years. So let me be clear. Anthony Richardson is the boom bust player in this draft class, I think. If he gets round 2 draft capital, I'm not taking him here. I will slide him down. But as long as he goes in the back of the first, the athletic tools he possesses, similar to Lamar Jackson in terms of type of player, it's a guy that, the cheesy term, breaks fantasy. That's what Anthony Richardson could do and could be if he lands in the right spot with a team that is willing to commit, 5 years to developing this guy and turning him into, what they hope he could be, what we hope he could be.
I knew we were going to have this conversation because I'm going to be so out on Anthony Richardson. And he is one of those guys.
I don't blame you.
When I was kind of hinting at with when the community sees, depending on draft capital, certain players getting taken, I think Anthony Richardson could be a top 4 or 5 pick in Superflex leagues.
I will never get to that point. I would like that here now. 107 is probably the highest I can take him.
I'm already seeing it in the community. I've already seen the top 5 Superflex Anthony Richardson from some pretty big names as well. And I
acknowledge the upside, clearly. But I can't take a player with that low, like that outcome. I cannot take them much higher than 107. Like, you want to take him over Sean Tucker, fine. Right. I can't go higher than that. That, to me, that's spicy. I thought 108. I was like, ooh, I'm shaking it up. No, I'm doing nothing here.
If you want a clear picture of the ceiling and the floor for Anthony Richardson, I went back into my database. Anthony Richardson right now has a 54% career completion percentage. There are only 2 other quarterbacks since 2000 to have been drafted in the first round with a sub 55% completion percentage. And it's Kyle Bowler and Jake Locker. But there are two other running backs who have also been drafted in the first round that have thrown for under 30 passing touchdowns in their career. Michael Vick and Cam Newton. So if I really can't paint any clearer of a picture of Anthony Richardson's ceiling and floor than that, basically those two statistics right there. I haven't seen enough from Anthony Richardson to warrant me taking him probably honestly inside the top 10, even though I 100% see the ceiling. But I like you said, you literally said a team has to sit there and be willing to develop them for 5 years.
Yeah,
like if I'm waiting for 3, 4, 5, I get that Josh Allen took 3 years and stuff like that. And now obviously
but
if you took Josh Allen, that panned out. But
here's the thing. You can develop him for 5 years to be an NFL quarterback. That doesn't mean you have to develop him 5 years to be a fantasy relevant quarterback. I mean, that's Lamar Jackson. That's Josh Allen. Right? I'm not saying he is these generationally game-changing quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts really took 3 years to come into his own and be the Jalen Hurts he is today. Justin Fields, still a very much work in progress, is a game-breaking fantasy quarterback right now because the rushing. And that's where all of this comes down to. Now, if somebody hops in our comments and says taking Anthony Richardson inside the first is stupid, I mean, yeah, it probably might be. Like I understand that. I understand this is a risk. You know, what type of risk are you willing to take on in your first round draft pick? That's what this is. For me, anything higher than this is too risky. That 110 to 107 slot, to me, that's the sweet spot for upside. If you're saying no chance until he slips into the second, that's fine too. And honestly, I don't blame you.
All right, so moving on from Anthony Richardson here, I'm up at the 1.09, and there's still decisions to be made because this back end of the first is going to, I think it's going to be really, really fun, and it's going to be heavily debated all offseason and draft season. But here at the 1.09, I think what I'm going to end up actually taking at this pick might be different. But as for right now, I'm taking Michael Mayer at the 1.09 here. And I feel like we've had, as a community, a very poor record of drafting tight ends in the first round of rookie drafts.
We're bad.
We're really bad because the tight end position is really, really hard to predict and figure out. But it's just the nature of the position for fantasy is when you get that guy, he is invaluable. When you have a Travis Kelce, a Mark Andrews, what we thought George Kittle could have hopefully have been had he stayed healthy and not have quarterbacks that only throw him the ball 4 times a game. What we think Kyle Pitts can be, like this is where I think Michael Mayer can get to, is a player that can absolutely be a game changer at the tight end position. And like you said, with Anthony Richardson, where you think that this back end, 107, 108 range is where you're going to take that home run swing at the quarterback position in Superflex. I think that's also a very good range to take that upside home run swing on the next game-breaking tight end.
He's what people wanted TJ Hawkinson to be, I think, from as a receiving threat. TJ Hawkinson was always a great blocker, and we knew that, and people didn't factor that in when he was in Detroit in terms of what that meant for his fantasy value. It meant TJ Hawkinson was staying in a block more than we wanted, even though he was a very good wide receiver. Michael Mayer is what TJ Hawkinson was as a receiver, but he's probably 5 times better just from an athletic playmaking standpoint. And again, when you're looking at tight ends in fantasy, I don't care if they can block. I hope to God he can't block. I hope he's the worst blocker that has ever existed because he's just going to be running routes. And he has the traits to turn into Dallas Goedert plus. Like that is in his range of outcomes. And to me, I'm fine taking that at 109. In tight end premium, he should probably go 2 or 3 slots higher even. Like, again, this is that upside tight end pick that changes the landscape of Dynasty, potentially, and the trajectory of a Dynasty team because you have a set it and forget it tight end. That's what Michael Mayer, that's the upside he introduces. At 110 here, people are not going to like that he's on the board still, and that's fine. I'm going to take Quentin Johnston. Quentin Johnston is the prototypical upside wide receiver. Big, 6'4", 201, a deep play threat, a guy that is shockingly good at quick slants and short yardage work. I mean, there's some work to be done as a route runner as a whole here, but at his size, I don't really care if he ever gets to the elite route running stage. He has just proven his physicality can win out as long as he has a quarterback that can put the ball up in his general vicinity. I mean, you're looking at a guy that is averaging over 20 yards of reception right now in college. It's just unheard of, the type of athleticism and big play ability that he offers. There are things to refine for sure in his game. But to me, he's still the wide receiver 3 because of the tools that the athletic tools that he has at his disposal. If he can harness those and continue to learn and grow, again, it's the lazy comp. He could be Mike Williams. He could be DK Metcalf. Like, that's the type of player that is in his range of outcomes.
I'm going to be completely honest with you here. I think Quentin Johnston is the most overrated player in this first round.
Really?
Okay. I really do. I see the upside. It's everything fair. You just said. The prototypical wide receiver, the DK Metcalf, the guy that can just destroy any cornerback that lines up against him. But I wish we saw that in college. Like, I wish we saw more of that in college. And we have you can say whatever you want to say about his overall statistics. I know that TCU is one of those offenses that isn't one of the most high-powered passing offenses. But even when you look at his adjusted numbers for all that kind of stuff, he is another wide receiver, like I mentioned with Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who does not have a 30% breakout age. His 20% breakout age is age 20, which was still his sophomore season, but he's a little bit of an older player. And then he actually regressed from last year to this year. His total dominator went from 24% down to 18%. He's not a big enough part of TCU's offense for this player that everybody continues to tell me is going to dominate at the next level, has all these physical and gifted athletic tools that he should just be winning every single pass that comes his way. If that's the case, why didn't we see it more? Why didn't TCU utilize him more? And that could be a whole, like, I got that as like my Damian Pierce knock of why wasn't he utilized more at Florida? And everybody's like, well, the coaching staff, and I forget what Dan Mullins or whatever his name is.
It was Mullins, yeah.
Is just horrible, and that's why he was fired. But if that's the level that we're gonna go to for every single like, we have to draw a line at some point, for why we haven't seen production from some of these players and prospects. And to me, Quentin Johnston just does not meet enough of the check boxes that I'm looking for, and I think he's wildly overrated as the wide receiver 3 in this class.
For you then, who lands up at that wide receiver 3? Is that about to be your 111? Am I jumping the gun?
Well, that's actually the funny part, is because I don't know who to place there at the
That's the issue with this wide receiver class, honestly. After the top 3, I'm not in love with the rest of the class.
No, I'm not either. Like, and I don't know if we're going to get to any other wide receivers at this point. But when you look at guys that are probably next on the list, it's Josh Downs, Jalen Hyatt. You can get into Zay Flowers. I know everybody loves, but the dude is a senior, 4-year senior that's not going to the Senior Bowl for some reason.
Marvin Mims is out there at Oklahoma.
It's a really weird class.
Yeah, but I think the top 2 are the safest prospects by far. Jordan Addison, Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Quentin Johnston has the potential to bust, just like a lot of people were afraid with DK Metcalf. Same kind of thing here. But he just, again, when you're looking at a toolsy standpoint, like, the physical tools are there. Everything you said is valid, though. Analytically, I don't think he's going to come out very well. I think that is going to be his Achilles heel. He's not my biggest bust in the first round, but we'll touch on that when I get back up at 112.
Okay. All right. So at the 111 here, I'm gonna take the other upside quarterback. I'm gonna take Will Levis, because I think, like Anthony Richardson, he has the rushing upside. He has all of that as well too. Maybe not to the same, like he is Josh Allen to Lamar Jackson. There's different levels of rushing upside there, but there's still rushing upside. But Will Levis possesses a lot more of the passing upside that I'm looking for as well. Like a Josh Allen. Dude has a cannon of an arm. I think Will Levis is the better upside shot at quarterback than Anthony Richardson, because I think, like I said, he possesses 85% of the rushing upside that Anthony Richardson does, but his passing ceiling is way higher, at least from everything that I'm looking at and from what I've been able to see. Maybe I just haven't seen enough from Anthony Richardson, and that's what's really holding me back. And that's the only difference making here is that I've just seen more from Will Levis. But to me, Levis is going to end up being my QB3 in this class, and I think is going to be a safer upside shot at quarterback. And I'm going to love scooping him up later than Anthony Richardson, just like what we did here.
So we don't have to get to 112 to get to my biggest Bucks pick, I guess. It is Will Levis. I have watched him on enough Saturdays at this point to just watch so many mistakes and
inconsistency.
Just inconsistency is the perfect word for it. He just, I don't know what is going through his head half of the time. And this year especially, the lack of rushing has just been a little bit confusing. So I'm worried if he's starting, at least, they're starting to develop him as a true quarterback now, that's a good thing. But it worries me for the potential fantasy upside to where if they are starting to coach him and we're seeing his rushing dip already, that trend makes me nervous heading into the NFL with a guy that I just don't think outside of the big arm is a very good quarterback. So if he's not going to be reaching Josh Allen rushing, I worry you get just a very, very bad quarterback in like year 2. And you're looking at a guy that is potentially out of the league or doing the Sam Darnold, potentially Zach Wilson tour here. That's the type of guy I see in Will Levis. I can't get excited about him. So moving to 112 here, I am going to go and now take my former RB3, now RB4, Zach Evans. He is, if you watch him, he is a violent runner that plays significantly bigger than he actually is. And while he's not Sean Tucker fast, he has long speed. He'll run in the 4.4s. He'll be a day 2 pick. And that is enough to say, like, if he lands on the right team, if he lands with a good offensive line, he can make a lot of noise year 1 as a rookie. That is in his range of outcomes to finish as a top 20 running back as a guy that, picks up 225 carries. That would be a great thing considering we didn't see it in college. And maybe gets, 15 to 20 targets. He's never going to be a receiving threat. That's why I don't think he should come close to Jahmyr Gibbs. You want to have him over Sean Tucker like I did 20 minutes ago? Sure, go ahead. He's just a good running back. Like in a traditional NFL sense, he is going to be a very good running back.
My fear with Zach Evans is he gets Isaiah Spillard. That is my fear.
Well, Isaiah Spiller's getting Josh Kelly right now, and that's 10 times worse.
that's even worse. But my fear is that Zach Evans ends up being like the draft season loser in a sense. Like the combine may not do him any favors, and then because of the combine, he slips into mid to later day 3. I could see him being a guy that, as I say that now, maybe he's a little overdrafted if he's going in the back half of the first. But I could see Zach Evans being a guy that if he's there in like the mid second, because he gets Isaiah Spillard, as a day 3 or a day 2, day 3 pick, then he would be a guy that I would be targeting kind of heavily at that point. But I think when we're talking about him, and 112, I feel like is kind of fair. But if he does start kind of bumping up a little bit and his ADP kind of has him in the 108 to 110 range, I'm probably more likely going to be out.
You know who I really like that I think could get Isaiah Spillard, and it's going to pain me, is Tank Bigsby.
Dude, don't hit me with that one because Bigsby's probably dang it.
I like Tank Bigsby a lot. Like I loved him last season, and he just didn't get a lot better this year, which made it just very underwhelming. But the receiving upside is there with Bigsby, a la Isaiah Spiller. So I worry heavily that he gets Isaiah Spillard, even though I think right now he's great. I love Tank. And the name Tank Bigsby being bad would just be a bummer for the sole reason of losing the name, like the name value there.
Right. Right. So he was actually going to be my pick at 2.01. I know we're going to have a whole different video for the second round here. But if you wanted a little spoiler alert for 2.01, Tank Bigsby is going to be my 201. So that's a nice little segue into when that second round video comes out, check it out.